uh, J&B Talk F1 for the Brazilian Grand Prix race day. If only we were there in Brazil. But yeah, we're here in Melbourne, though. It's a really beautiful day here today. And yeah, whatever you're doing, good day to you. And I'm Jawad Yakub, as always. Joining me is a very tired Baden Westerweller after his City to See marathon. First of all, tell us, Baden, how'd you go on the marathon?
Yeah, a bit of here, there, everywhere. I'm glad I could make it in just for this in between other commitments. But yeah, it was a great morning out, an improvement on the 12 months ago. So it's certainly something that's very satisfying. And yeah, it was nowhere near as taxing on the body as a marathon. So at least be in some decent shape come the morning.
Yeah, congratulations as well from myself for that, and I'm sure our fans would be happy for you as well to achieve something like that. But yeah, we're here for the Brazilian Grand Prix this weekend. We had qualifying overnight where Nico Rosberg took a fifth consecutive pole position for Mercedes AMG, out qualifying his teammate Lewis Hamilton, who joins him on the front row of the grid. Behind them, Sebastian Vettel qualified third in the Ferrari. We had Valtteri Bottas set the fourth fastest lap time in the Williams, but he will take a three-place grid penalty after he was caught overtaking under red flags during practice 2 on Friday. His compatriot will be relieved, Kimi Raikkonen, that Bottas won't be starting anywhere close to him after the recent tussles that they've had in the past in Russia and then last time out in Mexico. Raikkonen will be starting fourth as a result, but qualified fifth. Sixth fastest was Hulkenberg for Force India. Danny Kvyat quicker than his teammate Daniel Ricciardo in seventh. Felipe Massa eighth for Williams. Daniel Ricciardo was ninth. And interestingly about Ricciardo, now Daniel Ricciardo is running, as we said on Wednesday, the upgraded Red Bull and the upgraded Renault engine. So for Kvyat to set a faster time than Ricciardo, who's using the upgraded engine, that's something, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think from the Renault point of view, clearly Ricardo thinks that there hasn't been the most significant inroads made there, but I guess it's all academic at this point of his campaign. He's had so many setbacks, especially in the past month or so. Things just haven't been going right ever since that real high point at Singapore. So we'll see what happens now. It seems as though the Red Bull and Renault partnership will continue with this quasi reconciliation. In which form and effect it takes, we don't know. But for now, yeah, it's not going to get much better. So that they've got nothing to lose.
Very much so. So Daniel Ricciardo inside the top 10 regardless, but he'll take a 10-place grid penalty for that engine, the full power unit change. So he'll drop down the grid. We'll cover what position he's in a second. Behind him, we have Max Verstappen, who qualified 10th for Toro Rosso. Felipe Nasr, his first home Grand Prix in Brazil, 11th. Carlos Sainz in 12th. Sergio Perez, 13th. Marcus Ericsson, 14th. Then we have the two Lotuses who were a bit unlucky to be knocked out in Q1 and Q2 respectively. Roman Grosjean knocked out in Q2 and 15th. Pastor Maldonado, 16th. In Q1. Then we have Jenson Button in 17th. Another dismal weekend for McLaren so far, which was pretty much compartmentalized by Fernando Alonso's inability to set a time in Q1 because his car just gave up on him, and social media has been ablaze with memes and whatnot of Fernando Alonso sitting on a deck chair, sitting back and with his eyes closed and his hair waving in the wind. So everyone's come up with, what is he dreaming of? He's dreaming of being somewhere else and blah, blah, blah. There's so much to go on, but we'll probably discuss that on Wednesday, the state of affairs at McLaren. But again, Alexander Rossi outqualified his teammate Will Stevens, 18th and 19th for the two Mana Marussias. And when it comes to the grid with the penalties, Valtteri Bottas, instead of starting fourth, will start seventh. For his three-place grid drop, and Daniel Ricciardo will start all the way down in 19th, and he will be ahead of Fernando Alonso, who still, I think, would need permission from the stewards to race after not setting a time in qualifying, but most likely they'll let him race even if he only does a couple of laps.
Yeah, well, hopefully no repeat of Mexico, I guess, where you see maybe half a lap and he just knows that it's going to be game over, just like that. He's obviously got to have some interest in it, but can't blame him on what we did see on Saturday there, those images. We've got to do something just to maintain that any semblance of buoyancy, I guess, in what has been just an utterly dismal couple of months, really dating back to that pre-season testing crash.
Well, also what the images show is, and we don't get to see. We've heard a lot of frustration from Alonso over the team radio, and now seeing it visibly with his body language and his mannerisms as well, it seems like he doesn't want to be there in a sense, you know. And we've heard this so many times in so many different iterations of his career as well. When he was at McLaren initially, and then when he was at the latter stages of his relationship with Ferrari as well. I mean, could we be on the precipice of Alonso announcing not a retirement, but an announcement that he's going to take a sabbatical perhaps next year?
Well, certainly, I can't emphasise this enough. I think on Wednesday I might have run over the notion. I've got a very sneaking suspicion that Alonso will reunite at Enstone, probably for 2017 if things continue at this trajectory at Woking, whether he's at the actual cockpit of a McLaren in 2016 or whether he decides to take a year out and just recharge those batteries. I'm very quickly leading towards this thought that once Pastor Maldonado and Julian Palmer have done their job with this transition year, which it's being described as for Renault coming back into the fold, wouldn't be a surprise at all.
Very much so, but at the same time, questions still being asked about McLaren as to if they're going to be any better in 2016, and if over the winter, over a period of a few months without any testing, can they actually make the inroads that they need to be able to catch up with the leading teams? But that's something we'll definitely discuss later on. But as far as the race is concerned, over 71 laps, there's no immediate threat of weather either, though we can't really rule it out. It's Brazil. I think somebody in the commentary, it might have been David Croft for Sky Sports, said that it wouldn't be Brazil without some kind of action. There's never a boring Brazilian Grand Prix. So I'm sure we'll see something. And of course, there'll be between 2 or 3 stops. A lot of teams perhaps might even go for 3 stops in the warmer temperatures. And Baden, in warmer temperatures, we know that Ferrari certainly the Ferrari likes being quick in the warmer temperatures.
Well, you just got to look back to that first breakthrough at Malaysia, and then even Hungary was on the warmer side there, and quite naturally Singapore, we saw where Mercedes really were gone wanting for that weekend, quite out of character over the form of their 2 triumphant seasons. But I guess between here and all that, Mercedes still seem to be able to pull it out of the bag. So it's not as though we're going to be saying, oh, it's 5 degrees up on average or whatever, that we're going to have Ferrari dominating, but something to chew on, I guess. And I don't know as well if these curbs, which have been quite an issue as well, which have been said to slow down the cars a bit actually on the times, and they'd hope to be improving on from last season. I don't know if this will have any effect on the tyre wear as well, whether it's going to be really causing some issues.
Yeah, depending on, I know how we were so keen on Wednesday when we discussed that, we'll see the lap times finally be rewritten, like the lap records finally be rewritten in the new hybrid turbo era. But yeah, as much as we said that the new curbs, the height of the curbs, which are in line with the safety standards of the FIA at every other new circuit, is have really slowed them down. And there were some dramatic images actually of Felipe Massa, who's won 2 races around this circuit, and he's grown up in Sao Paulo, of course, and he trying to take his normal lines is unable to, and he's actually flown over some of the curbs because of how high they are. So clearly it's a circuit that everyone has, even the winners here, past winners here, have had to relearn in a sense. But at the same time, Nico Rosberg looking like the form man, and as far as the win is concerned, could you see Lewis Hamilton perhaps posing a threat on him?
Well, it has to be said, across the board, Nico seems to have lifted his game on a Saturday at the very least since that middle part of the season. Obviously, it hasn't served him much purpose on a Sunday because Lewis Hamilton took out the title with 3 races to spare. But it is slowly but surely that the German might have realised that it is now or never, and he seems to have just had this renewed vigor. We saw at Mexico, he was quite ruthless there, and then this weekend too, he looks like he's almost been on another level to to Hamilton, of course, who we saw leading up to this race. He had some kind of flu symptoms coupled with a bit of a prang. Who knows how many thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands that'll be setting him back in at Monaco. But
Well, it was his prize, the limited edition Pagani Zonda, which was made specifically for him by Pagani, and that's worth, I think, over £1.5 million. So the damage bill will be quite big.
I've got a feeling that, yeah, this will be Rosberg's race to lose. If anything, Abu Dhabi is the one where I can see Hamilton will be really charged up there to end the season on a high. Of course, he wants to break through here at Brazil for his idol in Ayrton Senna, but it just seems as though this weekend Nico Rosberg's in a bit of a special space, so it's going to take a lot to stop him. And don't need to mention again, turn one, will there be carnage? It's been tossed up ad nauseum, I think, all season. So until that happens, we're just going to assume, yeah, I think Nico Rosberg is the one who might take this race out.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair prediction in that sense. But as far as best of the rest goes, we've got two Ferraris now on the second row with Valtteri Bottas's penalty. So will it be difficult to see anyone but a Ferrari finishing third on the podium?
Oh, who knows? Last year we did see Felipe Massa score that third place. So there's a bit.
And that was despite he had, I think, a couple of pit stop errors and a drive-through penalty as well. He managed to salvage third.
Well, certainly he was an inspired driver to circuit, as you mentioned. He's got a lot of history. Of course, he was the Phantom champion in 2008 for the best portion of a minute. And we saw the subsequent outburst of emotions there on that podium, and stands to date, in fact, as his final victory to date 7 years ago. Can you believe his 11th victory? So who knows if something does happen? The Williams there, they can't be discounted, but of course Ferrari, they're always going to be the ones you put next, obviously best of the rest.
And also, we've got Nico Hulkenberg starting out of fifth position, and we've seen how over the past few races, whilst his teammate Perez has been reaping the rewards, Hulkenberg has had a bit of a barren patch. So could this be his chance to convert for a good result? You know, if he can finish in the top five, that would be, as well as consolidating fifth in the Constructors for Force India, it would be a good result for he himself as well, wouldn't it?
Oh, it's another circuit where he's had some good history. 2012 was a bit of a checkered event for him, but he was on track for a victory, it seemed, for a long time there.
Until, he had that run-in with Hamilton.
Final event for McLaren there, essentially. But other than that, he was on track for at least a podium, which is quite remarkably eluded him in his 5 seasons to date. So maybe if he gets a clean start, he could be well and truly in that top 5, and certainly since that mid part of the season, he has been outshone by a rampant Sergio Perez. So it'll be a good time for him just to go into the off season with a bit of a spring in his step.
Very much so, and we still look forward to what happens to Force India, of course, with those talks that came about last week that they might be undergoing a change and rebranding as Aston Martin Racing, and that would do wonders for them, especially on a budget basis. You know, give them a bigger budget and perhaps even bolster them up at the grid a little bit. But Felipe Nasr starting, I think, now out of 10th spot after Ricciardo's penalty, and scoring points out of his first home Grand Prix would be a delight, considering how passionate the Brazilian fans are. I mean, we talked so much about how the fans were so passionate in Mexico, even though they only had one Mexican driver. They have 2 Brazilian drivers, and even ever since the days of Fittipaldi and Piquet and Senna, they've been quite passionate, haven't they?
Oh, I think head over shoulders, any other compatriots of a particular driver on the grid. It's going to be hard to topple the Brazilians. They are just quite something different to anybody else. They're almost on the point of cult following. Of course, those levels haven't been seen since Ayrton Senna, but we've come close with Rubens Barrichello, and then Felipe Massa at his height as well attracted significant interest.
Yeah, I mean, last year when he got onto the podium, it was quite, you could hear them chanting, you know, the ole, ole, Massa, Massa. So it is quite interesting. Oh, I've just got a bit of news here as well that apparently Felipe Nasr will be taking a grid penalty as well for blocking Felipe Massa. during qualifying, so that sets him back a little bit as well. Unfortunately, that's quite sad to hear. Now, so he's taken how many places has he taken? I just read it right now, so excuse me for not being prepared. So yeah, Nasr will drop 3 places as well, so he'll be starting out of 13th on the grid. So that's a bit unfortunate, isn't it?
I'll certainly, it's not a huge penalty, but it's annoying in front of his home crowd. He does get to start on that clean side of the grid, though, so he might be able to make up for it in the first couple of laps.
Yeah, very much so. But as far as tips go, Baden, who are you looking at? Hamilton will certainly have the resolve to try and break the duck at this circuit. But as far as past success goes, Rosberg would be the man, wouldn't he?
Well, certainly, as I just mentioned before, I think he just seems to have his head in the right space. It's carried on from Mexico, and for Hamilton, he's had a bit of an interesting week, obviously, so he'll be looking to rectify it. But ultimately, it's going to be one of the Mercedes, and yeah, he'd be favouring strongly the German to get the job done again, make it his 5th victory of the season, and yeah, consecutive victories here at Sao Paulo. And
Very
then
much
third,
so.
yeah, going to be pretty conservative there. I'll say Sebastian Vettel will get the job done.
Very much so, and we look forward to it. As for myself, I'd say for sure Rosberg as well. Seeing him go back to back as well will be good for his confidence going into the future as well. But at the same time, it does question whether Lewis Hamilton is still switched on as he was a few races ago when the title was still out of his not yet clinched. But yeah, Rosberg certainly will be good for his confidence as well, and because he's won here previously. But before we go off air, we'd like to express our deepest condolences as well, and our thoughts and prayers with the victims of the awful attacks in Paris that occurred now 2 days ago. It's yeah, very heartbreaking to hear, and there was some controversy that occurred in conjunction with this at the Brazilian Grand Prix that apparently there was to be a little ceremony before the race with the FIA president Jean Todt, who is a Frenchman himself, and it was to be something with road safety. But a lot of people were upset when he said that this I think he said something like, do you realize that the number of people killed in road accidents is far bigger than the number of people who died in Paris yesterday? And as a result of that, he's copped quite a bit of criticism, and they really want them to do some kind of service or memorial minute silence before the race for the people who lost their lives in Paris. So that's a bit of a dark thing for F1 to have to look at.
Oh, certainly you can understand that the motive John Todd has for his road safety remit. It seems to be what he's predicated his entire tenure there as the president, but it's highly insensitive at this time. So
Yeah,
raw,
but yeah,
so much just to compare it, like, oh, just a bit of a terrorist attack. Oh, yeah, road car traumas. It's more. So who cares? It's not really anything important. So really, he deserves to cop the flag.
yeah, but yeah, looking at the morality of the comment, sure, your motive is to do with road safety and everything, but don't compare it to something like that. Simple as that. And I don't want to get too far into the intricacies and the moralities of all these things, but it's a bit of a common sense thing, and it's quite sad to see. Whilst all the drivers have lamented what has happened, I think Nico Rosberg, after his qualifying, said that you know it doesn't mean anything, the pole position, considering how everything's been put into perspective after what's happened what's happened recently. So yeah, as far as what I was saying before, both of us, it's deepest condolences. It's not something we want to wake up and see at all. But yeah, it's a state of affairs at the moment in the world, unfortunately.
Yeah, it just seems to be a stark reality that we have to contemplate any day. It's not really that utter surprise. Of course, there's the grief, but these things are becoming more and more prevalent. It's it's just yeah, the way it's expanding globally, everyone seems to be touched by it in some way, and it really does. When you look at all these sporting events and whatnot, they do tend to operate in their little microclimate, but these kind of events, which do indeed affect so many, just transcends the sporting matters of the moment.
It transcends any matters, as a matter of fact, but we'll just leave it there for, I guess, for now. But as far as the Brazilian Grand Prix is concerned, myself, I hope you can tune into my live blog as well. I'll put the link in the description, and at the time, please tune in. But it should be another fascinating race, Baden, the penultimate race of the season. So we look forward to bringing it to you.
Yeah, certainly Brazil. It's rain, hail, or shine. It's one of the top probably five, at least, even top three each year. There's always guaranteed some kind of shenanigans that do make it one to tune in for, and especially if you're based in Australia, you make that extra effort to be up in the wee hours of the morning.
Very much so. So from me and Baden, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time. See ya.